I hope everybody had a chance to have their box lunch, or maybe not, otherwise I'd be sleeping. Welcome to the first Alaska Native Studies Conference, and one of the very first sessions of Alaska Native Studies Conference. I'm honored to be here amongst all, with all you scholars. My name is Walkie Charles, and I'll be talking about myself in just a little bit, but I just want to, first of all, introduce to you the new committee that was appointed by Governor Sean Parnell after the passing of Senate Bill 130, the Alaska Native Language Preservation and Advisory Council. And I am humbled to be chairing this council. And we're all brand new, and so we're all brand new at our roles, and we have to, number one, get to know each other and who we are, where we come from, and I think we've done a really, really good job in becoming a good and strong family of people who have ears by which to listen to the needs of Alaska and Alaska Native languages. And we don't represent every language of Alaska, unfortunately, but know the fact that we have the ears for all the languages, and so. Or what else do I want to say? There's some housekeeping stuff. There's a sign-up sheet at the back of the room, and there's also brochures that the staff just recently made. I just saw it this morning for the first time, and I want to give kudos to the staff who. Pardon? The fact sheet that the staff have done. With that, I'm going to, like I say, the folks are going to be introducing themselves as we move forward. So I'm going to have Connie come up and take over for a little bit. Connie is one of our staff.
Good afternoon, can you hear me? Igam si kayo vikapikdom si italagaysi, waki irgu monga. And I just said in my own language, Siberian Yupik, I am so glad you're here. I'm Connie Irgu. My name is also Waki in my language, so my Ilungsi here, the chairman of our council. I've got to thank them all for all the hard work they've done so far. As staff to the council, we've only been together for essentially 4 months. So we are quickly working to get some information to the state as liaison to the council and the state. There's been a steep learning curve, and I just want to say they've done a lot of work. So thank you to them. And in our efforts, there's a lot of information out there already. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and because we've only been here for 4 months, we have taken the liberty of using information that is already out there. And many of you have seen this map already. There are 35 languages on this map, and you probably can't see the small numbers on this. There, in my research so far, some of the statistics are pretty alarming, but there's one bright spot. In my own culture, my own language, 21% language loss in 10 years really kind of scared me. And I wonder, how can we save even my own language? But there are other languages out there that have experienced a greater loss. The Aleut language from 1997 to 2007 has been a 49%, and this is all relative, not absolute differences. So 49% lost in Aleut. And this is from the University of Alaska Fairbanks Language Center, Michael Krause's research. There was a 51% loss in Alutiiq or Surpak, 13% loss in Central Yupik, 21% loss in Siberian Yupik or Sivokochmi. In Nubelk, a 41% loss. Coastal Tsimshian was a 60% loss. But the Canadian Tsimshian was a 300% gain. That was the bright spot. And sadly and I may say this wrong, Niska Gitskon was a 100% loss. For Northern Haida, a 38% loss, and no losses in the Canadian language. For Tlingit, it's 40% loss, Eyak 100% loss. Akna, 76% loss. Let's see, I'm sorry, I lost my point here. 40% loss in Dena'ina. Degaton, 62% loss. Holychuk, 54% loss. Koyukon, 50% loss. There was no change in Upper Kuskokwim. And Tananoff, 21% loss. 15% loss for Tanana, that was lower Tanana. And Tanana Cross is 15% loss. Upper Tanana is 46% loss. Han, 17% loss. And Gwich'in is 45%. So if you think about those numbers, and only one language, and that was a Canadian Haida, had a gain, we need to do something about preserving and making sure our languages thrive and survive. And that's why this state has created this council to make sure that our languages carry on. Because in the past 10 years, there's been such a great loss. I mean, 2 languages that had 100% loss, we have to do something about it. And it's not something that can be legislated, and we as Native people and language speakers, we should do something about it. It's really alarming. And if you have any questions or comments, we invite them either now or after. We will have breakout sessions after this session.
Do you have any kind of financial support for students that want to take their native language here at the university if it's not covered by our financial aid programs?
Well, as a language council, we haven't done that research in financial resources yet. There will be a breakout session on funding availability. We haven't conducted that research yet. We will soon though, in the next year, because some of the topics are really broad. We're going to focus on the law and how it impacts Alaska Native language. So the Voting Rights Act and education are 2 of the main areas of law that we'll explore first. And then with more input from people, we will conduct research in programs and education opportunities that are happening. But in addition to that, education or funding opportunities that go hand in hand with that.
Is there some place a student like myself could sign up to be working with your program or volunteering what little time I have to volunteer?
We would invite your participation. That's why we're here. And there is a sign-up sheet. Make sure all of your information is there. And if you want to add a note to the bottom, make sure you indicate you want to participate somehow.
Yeah, and what region are you from?
Southeast.
Southeast. I would dial into your education foundation for your region, because there might be resources, because what we're finding is that the world is very regionally organized with regard to funding and scholarships. So that might be something to check into too. Thank you.
And next is April Counselor, Distinguished Dr. Counselor.
Huyanda. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we're going to organize this presentation. We're going to be talking about the background and very short history of the council. As you know, we've only been around for a few months, but there was a lot of work that led up to the formation of our council, and a lot of work that has happened just within the past couple of months as we've gotten off the ground. Waki is going to be talking about that, as well as the mission and purpose of the council, which we outlined in our initial meetings. We're also going to give some time to the individual council members so that we could each talk about who we are, our involvement with language, and what it means to us, and some of the projects and programs that we have been involved in, because we all come from such a varied background around the state, and I think that's one of the reasons that we all form such a great team. So each of us will have some time to talk a little bit individually. We're going to be talking about some of the priorities and initial goals of the council, and also solicit some public testimony from you to find out what you believe should be some of the initial priorities of the council. We've done a lot of work internally to identify what we think might be some of the most important areas to research and to develop information for the public about, but that can't be done in isolation. We really need your help in order to move forward on those priorities. So I'm going to invite Waki back up to talk about the history and background.
Well, first of all, you're probably wondering who these people are. And yeah, we will introduce ourselves. But just to give you a heads up, my name is Waki Charles, and I'm with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I teach in the UPIC department at the university. And if you would raise your hand, Annette. Annette is, lives in Anchorage, and she's the CEO for the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And we'll talk about what language and what community she's originally from. I just want to give you a heads up as to who these people are. April Lackland, counselor from Kodiak, and Yayu Bernadette Alvarez-Stifel from Nome, and we have Dolores Churchill from Ketchikan, and they'll introduce themselves in a little bit. The Senate Bill 130, thanks to Senator Donnie Olson, the one who really pushed for this bill. I want to acknowledge him. I wish he were here so that we could publicly thank him for this, but he's really pushed hard to make this possible, so that we could create a council who becomes the ear for all of Alaska in terms of where is our language and what should we be doing with our language from here on out. So the Senate bill was passed April 15th, and I remember the date. I was just last year, less than a year ago, that this happened, and it was a good day for all of Alaska. The fact that there is a bill in the legislature with our languages on it, and so that's which means we're going to have to roll up our sleeves to find what it is about our languages that we need to work on. And Connie shared with us earlier about where our language is today, and in some cases it's really devastating, the fact that our language ability is declining, and where should we go now? And the thing is, we're here as representatives for the languages, and as Connie said, we're just starting. This is our 4th month of getting to know what we need to do in terms of the direction to improve language and to make the partnership with the legislature strong enough to where we say, well, this is what we need, because because we are the voice for the language, for our languages. So it was passed in April 15, 2012, during the 27th legislature, and signed into law May 28th. And again, it was sponsored by Senator Donnie Olson and Representative Alan Dick. And again, I can't say enough, and I can't thank enough these two wonderful people and the people who worked with them to make this possible. And the Representative Ben Nadia was just recently appointed. Hello.
Enjoy the Wi-Fi.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Thanks. Was just recently appointed to represent us at Juneau. And again, like I said, there are 5 of us who are appointed by the governor. There's me, and I'm originally from Imong, then April from Kodiak, Dolores from Ketchikan, Yayu from Nome, and Annette from Anchorage. South Neck. The mission of the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council is to advocate for the survival and revitalization of Alaska Native languages through collaboration and sharing for all. And when we first started, it was like, well, how can we identify what we want to do, what our job is as a council? And so we had to come up with a language that that didn't really belong to us, but something that is going to be representative of all our languages in Alaska. And the purpose of A&L PAC is to provide recommendations and advice to both the governor and legislature on programs, policies, and projects, and to network and advocate in support of the council's mission. And so it's a big ordeal. And when we first got together, we were overwhelmed, because it's like, there's a whole huge state, and there's how many of us? But with your support, we want to move forward, because we feel it's vital that we hold on to our heritage languages. Our keynote speaker this morning was talking about that too, about how important it is that we maintain our heritage language. I'm going to have Connie come up next and introduce Mr. Naga. To represent us at Juneau. And again, like I said, there are 5 of us who are appointed by the governor. There's me, and I'm originally from Imong, then April from Kodiak, Dolores from Ketchikan, Yayu from Nome, and Annette from Anchorage. South Neck. The mission of the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council is to advocate for the survival and revitalization of Alaska Native languages through collaboration and sharing for all. And when we first started, it was like, well, how can we identify what we want to do, what our job is as a council? And so we had to come up with a language that that didn't really belong to us, but something that is going to be representative of all our languages in Alaska. And the purpose of A&L PAC is to provide recommendations and advice to both the governor and legislature on programs, policies, and projects, and to network and advocate in support of the council's mission. And so it's a big ordeal. And when we first got together, we were overwhelmed because it's like, there's a whole huge state and there's how many of us? But with your support, we want to move forward because we feel it's vital that we hold on to our heritage languages. Our keynote speaker this morning was talking about that too, about how important it is that we maintain our heritage language. I'm going to have Connie come up next and introduce Mr. Naga.
On this council, there are 7 members, 2 of whom are non-voting and are appointed by the legislature, and 1 from the House, 1 from the Senate. The Bush Caucus, or the Senate President, the House Speaker of the House recently appointed Ben Nalayak of Barrow as the representative on the council. He is a freshman representative, and they are in the last days of this regular session, so he wasn't able to attend. He is a former North Slope Borough mayor and is in Nevada. And next, Walkie Charles will introduce himself.
I might as well just stay up here. Hi, again, my name is Walkie, and I'm the assistant professor of UPIC at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I've been there for the last 11 years teaching Urdu. But I still have learned to teach like my colleague Marie, my mentor Marie. So I got a long ways to go, but it's really nice to be teaching the heritage language at the university level. I speak Urdu fluently. I did get my PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and we have some faculty from there. In fact, one of my mentors in my chair is also here in the audience, and I thank Dr. Ziekman for all her help in making it possible. My interests are second language acquisition, dynamic assessment. It's finding a way to make sense of assessment for learners instead of me telling them what to do, but them telling me how they got the answer. And one of the things that I learned to say is, well, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Because the more they tell, the more I understand where they're coming from in terms of their answers. And the other element of my interest in research is sociocultural theory. And our keynote this morning was talking about that a lot. And my biggest passion is maintaining language through education. And in fact, there's more of a discussion tomorrow if you're here, little advertisement. There's a story of 4 PhD graduates who are going to share their story of their experience as Alaska Native PhD candidates who are now heading another PhD, a master's program, and that's tomorrow 1 o'clock. Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell. Then we have Dolores.
I'm Dolores Churchill. Haida. Ha chikudlangar kusal kasang. Kin hususu kum han ha chikusung. Dumano it on sneaker. So it ya kin ang sutikini kum wetla sutik. Huke it DPSN I'm saying that our language is getting lost. I am 83 years old and I'm one of 2 speakers in Ketchikan. In fact, I became so worried about our language that I'm going back to my village and I'm teaching. In fact, I just came back. I was teaching there for a week, last week, and I'm working with 2 carvers, but it was really inspiring because these 2 young carvers had studied Haida in school. They knew a lot of words, they knew a lot of phrases, but they didn't know the conjugation. And so I'm working with them in picking up the conjugation. And it really was inspiring because they were so smart. They knew all about the plants, which I don't know about because I worked in a hospital. And I took the medication my mother went out and got. But these young men went with the elders and collected the plants. They knew the Haida names. They knew what the medication was used for. And it was really thrilled to meet these 2 young men. But I really wanted to show some of the, I hope I'm going to do this right. My mother was always a teacher in our village. And in fact, when I started school, there was classes for children who didn't speak English but understood it, and I was in that class. And I'll never forget that we had a contest and somebody had to, the homeroom teacher found out that there was, that they were having a contest at the museum in Victoria. So, because my mother was a teacher, I didn't listen to her. So, my basket wasn't cylindrical. And everybody else had a cylindrical basket, but mine was, I can't remember if it was convex or concave. Anyway, when they were sending it, this homeroom, my mother said, don't put hers in, it's no good. So, the homeroom teacher said, no, we can't do that. We have to send them all in. And you won't believe it. When the prizes came back, I won first prize. And my mother said, you know what? It was white people that judged that. So she called Sylvia Kelly, my best friend at that time, up to the podium and gave her $5. And $5 was a lot of money. I was so mad I could hardly stand it. Then she called me up and she gave me a blue ribbon. You should have seen me stomp on that blue ribbon. I hated it. First blue ribbon I ever won. But anyway, culture was always part of our family. I know that when people brought salmon to my mother, we always had to bring the bones and anything we didn't eat, but we ate almost every part of it. We salted the tips and the tails, and we took the head and cooked it almost right away because we love the head. And so it was really part of how we were. We always respected the salmon, and anything we didn't eat, we returned to the ocean, to the water or river. And the other thing was, when we ate crabs, we did the same thing. We did not throw the crabs on the ground. We brought them back to the ocean because they had given up themselves to feed us, and that was really an important part of our culture. So culture was a really important part of who we were. So I think that with the language, it's all part of who we are and what we are and how we do it. I know when the salmon came to our rivers, we sang to them as they came back. In fact, the first child who saw a salmon jump, he would say, "Hi-ho!" And it meant that the salmon were back. And so it was a really happy time for our whole clan when the salmon came back to our rivers. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about the culture, but I think I'm talking too long. We only had a few minutes for our introduction. But you could read my introduction in the pamphlet and on the screen. I'd like to show a little bit more of the pictures that I took because there was such a change in the culture and dancing. You know, when they first started making the regalia, it actually started in Ketchikan in 1947. I was home doing homework. I was going to Ketchikan High School, and my stepdad, George Paratovich, he's the one with the big shark design, he called me, he said, "Could you bring my drum?" Well, I knew they had gone to dance because my mother used to love to dance. And so the polkas and all the modern dances. So I went down there with the drum, and here was Joe Johnson, a Tlingit, and he said to them, "We should quit this modern dancing and do our own dances." So it was really fun to watch them because some of them were remembering their songs. There were Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, and they were all remembering different songs and practicing them. And it really was exciting to see that happening. There they are dancing and really enjoying it. And you can see the regalia is just not, you can tell that real artists have not done the patterns. And then they're still using the old regalia, even though it's beautiful. That's my brother, who is Chief Gala, and then one of my relatives who was a chief from another village. And that's their costumes or their robes that they had. But see the dramatic difference when Nathan Jackson started doing the patterns. You could see the ovoids, the U shapes, and you could see my mother was teaching in the university, and she was teaching how to make hats, and that's one of the hats. And I don't know if you can't see Nathan on my screen. You can't see Nathan very good, but Nathan Jackson was really instrumental in the dramatic change because he was teaching at the Totem Heritage Center, he was teaching at the university, he was teaching in the museum in Juneau. So Nathan had a great impact in the change in the regalia that was being made. Okay, now that's the films that I had, and this is really a 95-minute or 45-minute film that I did for Native American month in November. So I just thought I'd show you part of the change which is the cultural change in the regalia. Thank you.
Mariana Dolores. I'm honored to speak after our elder member of the Language Council, and for us, her knowledge of the connection between language and culture is really, it's really important thing to remember, and she's also going to be leading the focus group on that if you're interested in that topic later in our presentation. Chamai, Hui Epralactonic Counselor, Aptachana Ishik, Ilanka Uyaksachmiwat, Chali Achwanachmuk, Anglichiana Uyaksachmi, Chali Shunami, Lichiana, Brown University, UAF, Chali UAF mi. Puktachtuanga Alutik Museum mi, Chali Kodiak College. And I guess I should translate. Most of it was probably pretty obvious. My name is Epralactonian Counselor. My Alutiiq name is Ishik. I was born in Kodiak and grew up in the village of Larsen Bay. Most of my family is from Larsen Bay and Afognak on Kodiak Island. And I went to school, came back to Kodiak, have worked at the Alutiiq Museum for many years, and starting last year began a faculty position at Kodiak College. For me, the Alutiiq language was not a part of my life growing up. In my family, the only Alutiiq words that we used were for fry bread and maybe huduks, sea urchins. I think those were the only two words that I knew of Alutiiq growing up, and I didn't even know they were Alutiiq words. Although my great-grandparents were visited and recorded by the late Irene Reed from the Alaska Native Language Center, and I had heard those recordings, it wasn't since that generation that the language was spoken in my family. There was a lot of intergenerational shame that occurred in my family, where members of the family who had light enough skin would try to pass as Russian or Finnish, which was the Lactonin last name. My father, who was dark-skinned, he wasn't ashamed of being Native, and that was one of the really important things that I got from him growing up. But he didn't know the language. His parents didn't know the language. My grandfather's first language was Russian. So I went all through high school not really having much of a connection to my Native heritage or much of a conscious connection. Although I grew up in the village and practiced a subsistence lifestyle, we lived in a one-room cabin, carried the buckets of water, walked barefoot to school, uphill both ways, all that kind of stuff. I didn't understand at that time of my life that that was a Native upbringing. I just thought that's how everybody lived. And once we moved to the big city of Kodiak, I realized that my life really had been something unique and different. And I didn't appreciate that until I went away to school on the East Coast to Brown University, where I suddenly realized how different I was. And that was when I first started having a real inkling of what I wanted to do with my future as far as my relationship to my community and to my culture. So when I got back to Kodiak during the summer, Sven Hawkinson Jr., who is the executive director of the Alutiiq Museum, he encouraged me to start learning Alutiiq. And I didn't really want to. I didn't feel that foreign languages were a strength of mine. I kind of grudgingly went back to Brown and did an independent study in Alutiiq language by studying the dictionary and making flashcards and learning the alphabet, which ironically made me the most qualified young person for Alutiiq language in my entire community. And I was immediately hired back by the Alutiiq Museum when they started up their Alutiiq language program in 2002. So that's kind of how I got started, but I hadn't even learned any Alutiiq at that point. I started learning using the Master Apprentice method from the elders Florence Pesterkoff and Nicola Oakley, who are both from the village of Akiak. And over the past 10 or 12 years, I have been gaining fluency in the Alutiiq language and also running many of the language revitalization programs going on in our community. I went back to school, got my master's in rural development, and then my PhD in interdisciplinary studies with a focus on language revitalization and indigenous knowledge systems. And I have my advisor here in the back row, Patrick Marlowe, who's been a great support to me. Since I got that PhD, things have really opened up for me. Even though I had advanced language fluency and I had learned a lot of Alutiiq and I had run language programs in the community, it wasn't until I had those 3 letters after my name that people started to really listen to what I had to say. And as a part of this language council, I'm really excited to be able to hear more from people from around the state about what you need in your communities. I've seen it at the ground level in Kodiak. I've seen some of the really exciting projects that just kind of fizzle out when the grant runs out. I've seen people who are really excited to learn the language, but then become so shamed from their elders mocking their pronunciation that they decide they don't want to learn the language anymore. I have gone through some of those cycles of excitement, initial success, or real small successes, and then things getting really tough, running out of funding, people losing their jobs, leaving the community, not being able to continue their work on the language. So I'm really excited to hear from you at the end of this presentation to find out some of your experiences in your communities, because I think it's going to be very similar to what we have faced in Kodiak. I know that all of our different languages around the state have different levels of endangerment, but they are all endangered. And so the time to act is now. I'm really excited that we have this council now to start collecting this information and sharing it with the public, sharing it with the governor and the legislature to make sure that the needs of our Native communities related to language are going to be addressed. So, and next we're going to have Annette Evans-Smith, so welcome. Which ironically made me the most qualified young person for Alutiiq language in my entire community. And I was immediately hired back by the Alutiiq Museum when they started up their Alutiiq language program in 2002. So that's kind of how I got started, but I hadn't even learned any Alutiiq at that point. I started learning using the Master Apprentice method from the elders Florence Pesterkoff and Nicola Oakley, who are both from the village of Akiak. And over the past 10 or 12 years, I've been gaining fluency in the Alutiiq language and also running many of the language revitalization programs going on in our community. I went back to school, got my master's in rural development, and then my PhD in interdisciplinary studies with a focus on language revitalization and indigenous knowledge systems. And I have my advisor here in the back row, Patrick Marlowe, who's been a great support to me. Since I got that PhD, things have really opened up for me. Even though I had advanced language fluency and I had learned a lot of Alutiiq and I had run language programs in the community, it wasn't until I had those 3 letters after my name that people started to really listen to what I had to say. And as a part of this language council, I'm really excited to be able to hear more from people from around the state about what you need in your communities. I've seen it at the ground level in Kodiak. I've seen some of the really exciting projects that just kind of fizzle out when the grant runs out. I've seen people who are really excited to learn the language, but then become so shamed from their elders mocking their pronunciation that they decide they don't want to learn the language anymore. I have gone through some of those cycles of excitement, initial success, or real small successes, and then things getting really tough, running out of funding, people losing their jobs, leaving the community, not being able to continue their work on the language. So I'm really excited to hear from you at the end of this presentation to find out some of your experiences in your communities, because I think it's going to be very similar to what we have faced in Kodiak. I know that all of our different languages around the state have different levels of endangerment, but they are all endangered. And so the time to act is now. I'm really excited that we have this council now to start collecting this information and sharing it with the public, sharing it with the governor and the legislature to make sure that the needs of our Native communities related to language are going to be addressed. So, and next we're going to have Annette Evans-Smith, so welcome.
Zandazun, Delta Itlasu, Ekmungisa Kahashka, and at Evans-Smith seasoning. My name is Annette Evans-Smith. In Koyukon or Danaka, my name is Nethla. I'm from Rampart on my father's side. I was born in Fairbanks. On my mother's side, I'm from South Naknek and Bristol Bay. And they call me Pijari there, which means in one dialect fancy and in another bashful. I'm both. I work at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. I'm currently the president and CEO. And my passion around language comes from my village, South Naknek, Nuyung. The Yupik word for Nuyung translates to kind of where children are crying. And it's because when the flu epidemic hit, all of the adults in my village were wiped out or killed. Only the children were left. And so that creates a break in language. I was very lucky because my grandmother was raised by her great-grandfather, or her grandfather, Ivan Olympic, who was a very old Yupik speaker. He was born in the 1860s and died in the 1970s. And so he lived to be about 116 years old, or 119. So he came from a very old time. And in addition to that, my grandmother had the forethought to make some recordings of him speaking in Yupik, telling very, very old stories. And so that's a part of my family history as well. And all of the things kind of came together at once. My grandmother had lent the tapes of my great-grandfather, Ivan Olympic, speaking in Yupik to a family member of hers. And we don't know where or how or when, but when this family member moved across the river, we think somebody didn't recognize the tape's significance. They didn't know what it was maybe because they threw it away. And it wasn't until somebody went to the dump, because they were, looking for useful things, right? That you do in a village dump, you look for things that you can take home and use again. They found a tape. And they picked it up and they thought, this is gonna be useful. I'm gonna be able to record over this and use it for something else. Well, just after this person found this tape at the dump, they had to come into Anchorage for some medical treatment. So that meant they needed a guardian to go with them. And this guardian happened to be my aunt. And because my aunt was coming into town, my grandmother decided to come to town. But normally this little trio wouldn't be coming to town together, my grandma, my aunt, and this gentleman. It was a very unusual group of people to be coming into Anchorage. And they're at my cousin Sonia's house, and my aunt was going through Glenn's bag because he had packed all kinds of strange things with him to bring into Anchorage. And she's going through the bag, and she's going through the bag, and she's going through the bag, and she finds a tape in it with my grandmother's handwriting on it. And she recognized it because my grandmother has very, very specific handwriting. And it's very beautiful cursive. And she looks at it a little more closely, and it says, Ivan Olympic Side 1. Luckily, Glenn had come into town before he had gotten the opportunity to tape over the stories. And so this was right about the time I joined the Alaska Native Heritage Center, so this is nearly 10 years ago. They gave me the tape to take to the center to get it digitized, to get it cleaned up. The stories are still intact. Somehow in the elements, the tape survived. And that's Ivan Olympic or my amount saying, these are my stories, bring them back. And so all of those things for me kind of happened at once. And that was my kind of rallying cry or moment of, I need to do something about language. And I happen to work at the Alaska Native Heritage Center where I can make all of those pieces kind of fit together. For years, we've run an after-school high school program. It's nationally award-winning. We work with youth across Anchorage. Many of our young people are young people that have moved in from Barrow, or they've moved in from some other part of rural Alaska. And they desperately need that connection to home. They need that connection to who they are and to where they're from. And we asked our young people once, about a year or two ago, what do you want from us? What do you want from us at the Alaska Native Heritage Center? And this shocked me, because these are young people, these are 14-year-olds answering this question. But they said, number one and number two, the number one and number two things that they want from the Alaska Native Heritage Center are time with elders and language. Our young people want language. They want it so very desperately. And so when I became CEO a year and a half ago, I very aggressively began looking for funding to do language assessment and to begin gathering data around who wants to learn our languages. So we saw the language chart earlier that has, percentage of speakers and so on and so forth. I think there's another column to that chart, which is who are the learners. If we can begin identifying learners, we can begin connecting them with programs, because there are programs across our state that work to support language that have done wonderful things, programs like in Kodiak, for example. What if we were able to connect the people in this city, in Anchorage, which is quickly the Native population is growing here in town, connect them back to Kodiak and what's going on in their island to keep the language effort going. So The center embarked on this research project or this survey about 6 months ago. We're well in the way of gathering the data. I'm not going to steal their thunder, but Amber and Marcella and Rochelle will be presenting tomorrow. So if you want to know more about what they've found in conducting, I think, 8 so far, with regard to what languages people want to learn, how do they want to learn, when do they want to learn, and what methods do they want to learn by, whether it's immersion or one-on-one or elder mentor or whatever. They've got a lot of great data on that. I would encourage you to sit in with them on their presentation tomorrow, because for me, for the center, we have this very statewide outlook for Alaska Native languages. We want to connect to all of the regions. We want to strengthen the network that's there, and we want to bridge the gaps between what's happening in regions and what can happen in Anchorage. I think a lot of wonderful things can happen in Anchorage. With the Native population growing the way it is, in South Central Alaska, the last time I looked at the PFD numbers, 47,000 Alaska Natives were in South Central Alaska alone. That's a pretty big population. There's critical mass there. We can create, I think, really, really wonderful things. My background professionally is in fundraising, it's in advocacy, it's in coalition building, it's in media. That's what I bring to the council, as well as a passion for language. I'm a Yupik language learner because I still have my grandmother, luckily, and when she's in town, she helps me work on my Yupik. And I also have another instructor, Marge Nakak, who works with me also at work. This summer, I will be delving into a Danaka immersion class with my son. The Heritage Center will be partnering with the Doyon region to conduct an immersion, a 6-day immersion in Anchorage. But those are the partnerships and those are the kinds of connections that we want to make. And I'm very, very honored to serve on this council and to kind of bring some intentionality back to making changes in the numbers and creating that column of who are the learners, how can we connect them to language programs, and how can we make those numbers start going in the right direction. Because I really, really feel that for us, our language and our culture, all of those are our protective factors that will battle many of the ills that we're facing. I really think our languages are like a life raft for our people, and I want to give that life raft to our young people in particular. So. With that, we will introduce Bernadette Alvarez-Gilmore.
Thank you, Annette. Ugibong mi gurunga, kagota mi agliro gurunga, sapna zomi. Aka mablu, ana mablu, ineklu inipira iga gamishiro nami. Nalurunga nalok mi rak na mikis korea kama, in na duak tanga nalok mi ikin. Kineklu ituret, nalaglu ituret. Ima tuklok mga iskokte, Bernadette. Nalukyo na kiwa, Bernadette. Kanako, optigni yayurunga, nagaluyay, or anam. Kanako, lukakirunga optigni. Namamlu aka mamlu ni piwak to dik agigakayak nga. Hello. My English name is Bernadette. I was named after my mother's younger sister. And my Tibetan name is Yayuk. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother on the east end of Nome. We call that Tehota, growing up. And when I entered school, I had no word of English. So I'm sure every time the kindergarten teacher said, Bernadette, I didn't respond because I didn't know that name. I only knew the names Anam, which is a pet name for the youngest child in a family, or Yai or Yayu within my community. So it took me a while to respond to Bernadette. My parents are originally from King Island. They moved there moved from King Island to Nome in 1954 because my father knew he wouldn't see me be born and the way our family structures is. We have teasing cousins and partner cousins. His partner cousin and his family moved with my family. So my mother wouldn't be alone to try to live without her husband. Anyway, when I was 3, she remarried to a man from Ingalit, which is Little Diamond. So I grew up listening to Ingali Mute and Uguba Mute. And I thought every single person that's on this earth listened to Ingali Mute and Uguba Mute until, you go to school and you listen to English. But as I found out later on, that doesn't work that way. So my early life was all in Inupiaq. My grandmother was very strict, no English. I have older brothers that went to school, came back home and tried to speak in English to me, and my grandmother said, no, she said, don't speak English to her, she'll learn it at school. Speak in Inupiaq at home. Again, I thought every single person spoke Inupiaq at home and English at school. That was my normal world. And for my professional life, I was a teacher for 23 years at Nome Public Schools. I taught Inupiaq language and culture, and eventually English as a second language, and that's where I got a lot of interest to watching students learning English as a second language, because at the time I knew eventually in 20 years' time it's going to be Inupiaq as a second language that students will have to start learning. Guess what? That's exactly what's happening now. It's been more than 20 years, of course. So it's always been my interest to watch students, second language learners, how they learn at school or how they learn in their homes, because student learning is different from adult learners. Okay, adult learners were really depending on the writing. People want to see the writing. But for kids, they're listening, they're active, and you could do activities with them in the language. You don't have to show them words, but they remember it. I know it because I experimented with my youngest child. I didn't read to her. I told her stories, Inupiaq little stories that we have. Just told her a lot of stories every night. And whereas I taught my oldest child, Megan, she's up here, I taught her how to read before she went to kindergarten, because I knew how those teachers were going to teach, for reading. So it was completely different with my youngest one. I quit teaching to stay home with her, to Inupiaq with her at home. And I told my husband we can get behind in bills, but I got to do this. So I did. So she understands a lot more Inupiaq. She can respond if she needed to. And ever since she was in high school, she's been recording her aunts and uncles on her phone, when the phones came out. So she's got Inupiaq prayers and songs on her phone that she listens to. And she almost got them memorized, she said, and that'll be a lot more than me. So, and then I taught grades 4 through 6, and I tried to weave in Inupiaq wherever I could. Every day, I provided an Inupiaq word or phrase to my students, and that was their password to go back home at the end of the day. It might be Alapa, it might be Hanho Itbin, it might be Suzukbizi, any one of those. But they had to say that I did it in the morning, introduced it, put it up by the door, and in order to go home for the day, they had to say that to me. And that was pretty effective, because the grandparents are asking their grandkids, where did you learn that? So, and that's one word a day out of 180 days of school, if they went to school every day. And then I pretty much, taught Inupiaq language and culture, tried to integrate it with science. That's where we were stuck at the school, the public school system. We were stuck with having to team teach with the classroom teachers for science. And then later on I find out it's because pretty much everything we do at home is science. When a hunter comes in with a nipsa, a seal, the the grandmother, the mother is butchering it right there in the living room or in the kitchen. You know, and the kids are watching. I had to clean those intestines when I was a kid. My mother or grandmother would make slits and I had to squeeze it out to clean it. It didn't bother me much because, you know, when they're done with the meat, it's really good, nice and crunchy. So, when my youngest graduated from Nobel's High School, I moved on. From education, I work now at Quark Incorporated as the Eskimo Heritage Program Director. This will be my 3rd year. It's very different. It's a year-round job. I don't have my summers any longer. We just have the days off. Teaching was really wonderful because I can participate in our subsistence lifestyle starting in the summer when the men go hunting for ukruk, the bearded seal. I could make the panetto, I could make our misera. And I could, you know, take care of it, go pick for our greens throughout the summer, different types of greens. And, but now I'm not as active with that because I have to work during the summer with the present job I have. And part of my biggest project with my new job is to help our Inupiat language to revitalize. We have a couple of dialects that we know of, 5 speakers in 4 villages, White Mountain, Golovin, Council, and Solomon, 5 speakers or less. And the youngest speaker is in her 50s. And we just had our Quark Elders Advisory Committee meeting with our Quark board. Quark, by the way, is our nonprofit organization. A woman from Koyuk, an elder, said they have 5 speakers left. And again, the youngest is in her 50s, nearing 60. And you know, this morning we listened to Dr. Graham talking about having our prestigious PhD individuals. But you know what? We have our esteemed elders. And that's who we go to in our communities. They're our PhDs. They're the information for everyone's PhDs. And also our cultural experts. If it wasn't without them, we wouldn't have what we want walking around with all of us having PhD degrees. So with saying that, within my community of King Island and Nome, I am an elder in training because at my job, we staff the Eskimo Heritage Program. We staff the Quark Quark Elders Advisory Council, and also the King Island Native community just started an elders group, restarted up again, and I'm their worker bee. So I don't mind volunteering for that because they're the information holders and cultural barriers in our community. And since I've had so many years in education, anything that comes to education at Quark, it comes to me automatically. So I'm constantly advocating for cultural knowledge within our region for the school districts. Even though I'm not with the school, I still advocate for our Native students so that their teachers who come from other states can begin to understand them and teach them better. And the student reaction is right there for them. Because some of our communities where there's large teacher turnover, they just go, when they see a brand new teacher come in. So we need to, for me, make that real effort to adopt those new people, and really let them learn about us from the inside out. Thank you.
Thank you, Yai. There's a lot of story that have really made this council what it is. We all have our own personal experiences that have led us to really focus on what it is about language that moves us. I'm one of those last people who was beaten out of the language at boarding school. It came to a point where I was repulsed, even hearing Yukun. in boarding school, and I did not want to associate myself with those who snuck and spoke Yuktun. And because I thought it was the most embarrassing thing to do was to speak Yuktun. And then 33 years ago, I went to the university for the first time. And that's where I realized that there was a program, Eskimo 101, and Eskimo 102, and Eskimo 201, and Eskimo 202, and Eskimo 301, and Eskimo 415. And at first, I doubted the fact that this was legitimate, but I walked in, and it was a white man teaching Yuktun. And I liked him, and I've never stopped since. And that's why we have so many of our folks, our council who was really determined to find ways by which to strengthen our heritage language. And without your help, we can't move forward. We are just liaisons, and you're the ones with the voice. And do know the fact that it's with your help that we can address these concerns to the legislature. It's a big ordeal for us, but we'll humbly do it for you. So, and what we're going to do with this? Yeah, go ahead, April.
At this point, we would like to know if there's anybody here in the audience today that would like to submit official testimony or semi-official testimony to our council about any of the topics listed here or anything related to Alaska Native language preservation and revitalization. We have a recorder here. We are taking this information and we will definitely use it to help guide our efforts over the next couple of years as our council really becomes more active. So is there anyone here that is comfortable speaking in front of the group about any of these topics? Would you like to come up here so that we can hear you on the microphone?
Address their names.
Oh yes, and please share your name when you get up here.
Shishida, Shiishi, Stephen Hawley, Kunkaiga Eshlan, Denaina Kastana Eshlan, Tabona Eshlan, Tolchina Eshlan Shi, Digayatnu, Skoy Kalan, Taonik, Skuskoy Kalanda, Katnu, Eddie Shonta, Katnagaluda, Makahali, Shaunta, Laura Kurosha Tunta, Janan. And what I said was, this is who I am, this is me. Stephen Hawley, Wolf Shadow, that's my Indian name. It's kind of cliche, but that's my name. I am Denaina and white. I come from the Beach people. The Water Clan is my family. I'm from Taonik, or I live in Anchorage, but I'm from Taonik. But my mother raised me in Kenai. And then my father is Michael Hawley, and my mother is Laura Croto. Thank you. I grew up, well, I was born in Taonik, and then we moved over for educational opportunities and, for other opportunities to the Kenai side, which is on the other side of the inlet from my village. And to put it bluntly, the Native culture wasn't really widely accepted when I was growing up. In fact, we were spit on, we were harassed nonstop my whole life. And it really showed me the perspective on somebody that doesn't know anything about what it is to be Native. And it also demonstrated how much wasn't known about what it is to be Native. And one of the things that really helped me to get past some of those stigmas was to really know how to identify myself. And language is one of those options that we have as people to really define who we are. You know, I can tell you who my clan is. That's my family all over Alaska. Anybody that's Tayonic, that's part of the water clan, that's my family. The Dena'ina is to be the people, and all Native people express themselves as, you know, as that term is to be the people. And when you say Dena'ina, is to say it in our terms. So we're very unique within the broad term of everybody in this world. To say I'm Tabona is to say I am the beach people, which is a part of Dena'ina. And it really defines who I am specifically from my geographic area, from where I am at, within the people I am within the whole world. So language really was able to convey the concepts to be Native without having to do all the extra terms it takes to, you know, talk English. And it's nothing really big, nothing really complex. It's just, you know, Native is very practical in its terms. And that was my experience, was to learn about that practical knowledge, but that had high impact, you know, through developing my knowledge base of my history and of my people's history and our understandings. I'm not too sure what I'm all supposed to talk about. Just my experience with Native languages and
Yeah, just, you know, what you feel about it, and if you have any recommendations for our council.
and I've been learning more and more. Marilyn, she was here earlier. She's my teacher. I had a bunch of teachers, and my grandma was always yelling at me. It's like, you little chill. I said, Grandma, what's chill? I said, you don't say that. That's a bad word. You know? There's a lot of people that it took just for me to know the little bit that I know. So, you know, it really just takes, you know, time and effort. And one thing too is, you know, we're an oral tradition, and so oral traditions, there's a lot of information. You know, everybody's always talking. You know, you go visit somebody, you get an update of how so-and-so is doing, and you get an update of this and that. And in oral tradition, you know, you got a lot of information, but you got to cipher through it to make sure that you have the correct information. And so with with my language, you're always going to get people that are not happy with their pronunciation because that's not the way they said it in their family, or perhaps there may be different dialect, but, you know, even within the same region. So it really takes a lot of establishing the correct people to look at, to, you know, to trust, for people to trust them with their pronunciation, to trust their explanations. So my biggest recommendation would be for each language to have a champion. You know, the boardroom has a champion for programs that are new and, you know, sound different and nobody's really sure about it, so they'll have a champion. Do the research, explain the concepts behind it, and show any successes that have happened before, and, you know, just move it along, walk the program along. Well, this, you know, talking a different language, you know, especially a Native language, which is so different from English in many respects, that, you know, you need somebody that can delineate what this format means. You know, Native language, it has a very, it makes sense, but at the same time, you look at it and you're like, it takes a lot of conceptual insight to figure out what's going on within the language, you know, in its mechanics. For Dena'ina, I don't know about anybody else's, but, you know, for Dena'ina, that's how it is. And just having that person that can give that insight, and, you know, people respect and can, you know, come to freely and feel comfortable with that. That's probably your biggest tool that you can have, and that you can actually invest in and, you know, start showing results with, you know, people learning languages. All right, tonight.
Juliana, for your story and your feedback. Is there anyone else in the audience today that's willing to share? Please come up and be sure to state your name and where you're from.
Kwapa biuhunga bilang kanuna ka ya kumimut kalu ya kumimi ang lishung duka kanga kang ringung kuk anu yalun kuksu nuna ka ya kumimi jali duka kanga Erling Richardson Samuel Thomas Shields Senior the first Greenville Mississippi kumimulutuk Bibigo tungo pagasu manisulit na wala na was tumakju na may hutster. Hutster kanaya akjaka. Basically what I just said. Hi, my name is Bio Bolivia Shields. My family is from Tuxuk Bay, Nunakaya, from the Kaluya Mute region, people of the Dipnet. I am the granddaughter of Chief Paul John and Martina John of Tuxuk Bay, and Erling Richardson and Samuel Thomas Shields Sr. the first from Greenville, Mississippi. I am half Yupik and I am half Black. What else? I first wanted to start with, and I also said, I'm going to school to become a Yupik teacher because I'm so passionate about my language, and people say it's such a thriving language, but it is slowly becoming lost, so that's what I'm doing to help out. But first what I'm going to talk about is stories of language learning. Well, I was blessed to be raised by my grandparents until I was 5. My parents were young, new parents, and they were just starting out, and my mom was a teacher and she was into school, so I was always sent to my grandparents, and I got to learn my language and my culture, and a lot of different values, and that's the values that have shaped me today, and I'm very happy about that. But then I also went to school in Bethel, so I learned the Kuskokwim dialect, so I speak Nelson Island dialect and Kuskokwim dialect. When I grew up, people were always so surprised, because I remember people used to come to me, "Oh, you're so cute, da, 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 da. You're so cute, cute little black girl." And then I remember they used to go to talk to my parents, like, and I'd be like, "Wait, you didn't speak to me in Yupik. You spoke to me in English." I remember I used to get so angry. I used to say, "Huinga, you hunga." But because until then I didn't really know I was African American. The curly hair didn't tell me, so it was kind of a little language learning story. But I was it kind of tied together. I also wanted to talk about the successful programs and methods. Well, I was blessed to have gone to the Aipulit Nalvik Yupik Immersion School in Bethel, and there we learned Yupik, and we learned to read it, write it, speak it, translate it, everything. And we learned about the different cultures. I mean, the Yupik culture, and sometimes we'd learn about the different cultures, and we'd have elders come in, and I remember when my uncles would catch too many seals or even walruses, or I don't think we had a whale there, but they'd send it to our school and we'd cut it open, and together with elders, we'd cut it, and we'd talk about the different ways of how people would prepare the food. So I know one time we brought herring, and where I'm from, we hang them on like a teepee looking thing, but we also make ninamayak out of them, and we put them in seal oil, and we make ushipungayaks, and we hang them up after we fillet them. But we talked about the different Yupik regions and how they prepare the food, and we compared them. And what else did we do? Well, I was. Oh yeah. We Yulak Eskimo dancing, Yupik dancing. We dance all the time, and we had first catch ceremonies, and we had different dance festivals, and we always had elders coming in. And I remember the school was it's a school by choice. So if you were wanting to go, you could go. It didn't matter if you were Native, it didn't matter if you were Yupik, it didn't matter if you were Inupiaq, it didn't matter if you were African American, obviously, but it was open to everybody. And I like to think of that program as being successful because we had 100% Kasuk people, both Kasuk parents, blonde hair, blue eyes, and they spoke Yupik fluently. And so I like to think of that program as being successful, but the only thing I'd say that wasn't good about it was after you went to that school, because it's a K-6 school, you didn't have anywhere else to go. I know the high school had a class, but it was like Yupik 101. Oh no, they moved that. And I'd sit there and then I'd speak maybe like a teacher aide, but I couldn't really advance to the next level. But that's one of the successful programs I wanted to tell you guys about. And another story of language learning. What I've noticed, I'm not like an elder or anything, I'm just a young person and I'm just a person. But what I've noticed is that I've had some of my cousins who weren't as persistent as, who were always around people who speak Kasuk, English, and their Yupik's not as good as ours were. And I noticed that when we would play with them and we try to speak Yupik, we'd speak Yupik to them and then they'd try to speak Yupik to us. And I remember that we'd be like, okay, we'll just keep speaking, and even though they didn't say the right words, we would be like, it was okay. But when we had like others come who were big speakers, and they'd laugh at them because they couldn't understand, because they couldn't pronounce the words right. And so my grandmother always told me, even though they don't say words right, not to laugh at them. And because they were learning, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. Yeah, so. But yeah.
And do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Chish, Shaksan Kiki Hadosa, Kagwantam na Hatsiti, Ishpa, Dentang City, Sinakau, Rehat, Jiskat Kwan, Hatsiti, Angrit Echadiati. I'm known as Shirley Kendall. But my real name is Shaksani Keek, the famous weaver, and I don't know anything about weaving. I'm from the Eagle clan, Kagwantan, and my father was a raven from the Daintown clan in Huna. My mother was from Haines, makes me choke at and get. So I'm so pleased to be here and to hear about this. I don't think I want to go down that list. I'll be here for 45 minutes. There is something, because of my experience in teaching, that one of the issues that I think is really, really important is the the issue of finding teachers that can teach the languages. And it's really evident here with all the different languages that there are people who can do this. But the difficulty we run into is to have the people certified so that the students can get credit for learning a language in the World Language Department, the same as Russian and French and German. So it makes it really difficult. And the reason I support this is I have taught Tlingit at the Heritage Center in various places. And the parents are really enthused. They bring their kids, and we have an evening program, and we sit around and we're learning the language. And gradually, they quit coming, they miss one class, then they come the next class, and next thing you know, the children can't drive and come by themselves, so it's up to the parents to bring them. And that just kind of fades out. In the school system, those kids are captive audience. They have to come, and if they sign up for your class, they have to be there. And you have to prove to the parents that those kids are there. And I think that is a really good area to concentrate on in regards to teaching a native language to restore, revitalize the language. And I already feel sorry for you because as soon as they talk about your function, the first thing they put in there is you have to come up with cost-effective programs to do all this. This is a monstrous program, very huge. So I think that if we can look at this, and it's amazing when you come down to the little children who can learn the fastest are not being reached. We don't have people that can work with them. So it's important to look at that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is this is very exciting to have this. This is a very small part of a big program, big conference here. Is that if in the future sometime it would be really, really nice if we could have a Alaska Native Language Conference where we could really work on some of these issues that you have listed here. And we could break out and we could talk about methods that really work good and what is available and who can teach it, who's doing what, and sharing ideas with each other as teachers. I think that there's a lot of very exciting things that we could do. So I didn't want to take up too much time of your time, but these were the things that I've been thinking about. And I'm so happy to see you guys here. And all of you. Thank you for bringing this to us. Ashish.
Hello, my name is Cora Johnson. I'm from Anacostia. Nagulra is Susa, Pajit Hadanas. My Indian name is Nagulra, and I'm with the Caribou clan. I really don't know what historical experience with language loss is, but I grew up talking Cayuga, and that's all I knew. But when there was up to only 8th grade, and I had to go to Rangoon, and it was not a happy place. When we did talk our language, they wash our mouth out with soap. And some of them, I don't know what they had in it, but it made your mouth foam. So when I went home that summer, I didn't want to talk it no more. And it's still hard for me to talk about it because, for one thing, thank God it's a long time ago, And I am trying to bring it back by teaching my kids and my students. But I don't have any ideas, because when I couldn't talk it no more, I don't like to bring things back by inviting negative things, because that's not the way to learn. And I'm probably the last of my age group that are trying to bring the language back. I speak Koyukon fluently, but I only do it at home. I don't go out and that's just because I'm ashamed of trying to bring it back again. But the good thing is my brothers and sisters who are way older than me, they talk it all the time because they live in the village. And I'm one of the few people that live in a community where my husband is from. Everybody else is in Alakakit. And so I'm kind of floating because I live in a community where I'm not accepted. So I really love it when young people come up and talk about who they are, where they come from, and they're proud and they're not scared. That's really encouraging to me. Thank you. The other thing is my brothers and sisters always told me, ever since I was young, to just keep talking, even though I was scared to, because you don't want to let them wipe your mouth out. Or some of them, they put their hand out, you still like this, and they hit you, so you don't speak it no more. So you can imagine why it's so critical to start learning your language. Because if you lose it, look at 50% for Koyukon language. I almost fell off my chair. I didn't realize it was that bad. But it is really hard. I actually came here because I really need a lot of ideas on how to bring language back and how to teach it. I teach, but can you imagine me trying to teach something I'm not really comfortable with? But when I go home, I'm a different person. And I'm one of those that moved into a community that doesn't accept me. So I know I don't belong there. But they're not mean or anything, I just know. And so I really don't know where I'm from. Because when we try to get scholarships, like Doyan, I try to get scholarships from them, but since I don't live in the region, I'm the lowest one to get one, if I do get it. And if I try to get one from the village council where I live now, since I'm not from there, I'm not eligible. So I've lived all my life working to get a good education. And I'm struggling right now to get my PhD. I mean, I'm just scared out of my mind almost, but I'm scared because I don't want to lose it because I work so hard. And it's not easy to come up here and talk about it because I think that's why I've had low self-esteem all my life. It took a lot for me to come up and tell you what I did, but maybe if somebody learns from me, then it will have been for a good cause to bring our language back. Thank you.
Anabasi.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Madison from Cupid and Highland from CAIC. I work here in Anchorage for First Alaskans Institute. And I just wanted to first say thank you guys for offering this moment to take some testimony, to be here and to present your guys' hard work and your hard effort on behalf of all of us. So I'm going to Chishawa for the work that you're already doing and you will do for us on behalf of our languages. I wanted to share a couple thoughts and really I think maybe it's to let you know, to reach out to First Alaskans Institute, to our Alaska Native Policy Center. We want to back you up. We want to back up your efforts. We want to help empower you. We want to be a voice when you need us to be a voice for you and your activities. And when I say that, I'm thinking about things like, as a state advisory council, you may be limited in terms of the scope of what you can do, but by all means, our community is not limited in what we can do. And also, when you look at the laws and regulations as they apply to or impact our Alaska Native languages, use us as a feeding ground for provoking thought in our community. We have the ability to convene think tank sessions, so when you have recommendations you're thinking about putting forward, but you want to kind of tear them apart a little bit more and bring some other people into that. Like Graham Smith said today, it's about the collective, it's not about the individual, so however we can help. I also wanted to share something that I learned when I was down in New Zealand that I thought was just so amazing. And he talked about it a little bit today, and that was around the community service aspect. One of the things that I was so struck by when I was down in Aotearoa was that they, many of their institutions, they provide language learning at no cost. At no cost. What they say is, your language is your right, so we don't have a right to charge you for learning. Which I think is just, it's coming from the other side of thinking about what we do and how we do it. But that was something that was really inspirational to me. The other thing is that we do have a lot of pain around the loss of our languages. And we talk a lot about that loss being a deficit, the hurt, the things that have happened to our cultures and our communities because of that. And all of that is true. But I would also say that it is also a part of our amazing story. That through all of the things that have been done to us, we still have our languages. You know, that is actually an asset. It's a miracle considering all the money and the law and the policy, including church law and policy, to make sure that our languages disappear. So the fact that we're still here, that we still have people who are speaking, and that you guys are here doing this work, that's an asset. You know, we come from a place of strength as Indigenous peoples with our languages, and your guys' presence is a testament to that. And I just encourage you to just hit that hard every time. We're still here. I would also make a policy recommendation. Alaska Native languages need to be official languages of the state, you know? On that last little bullet there. The practices of colonization, to take those things out of us, they're still existing. They're not historical. It's not past tense. If our kids aren't learning their languages in our public school system, which we help fund, those things are still in place. So however we can be of assistance, whatever we can do to support your good work, just let us know.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Megan Olena Stifel. I'm from Nome, Alaska originally, and I'm happy to follow Liz Medicine Crow because my comment is in sync with hers. I'm not as good as a public speaker as she is, though.
Whatever.
So growing up, I had the honor to be raised by my mom and her four best friends, and they all went to Native education conferences around the world. Martha Stackhouse and Nita Reardon and Esther Liptik and Lolly Karpuk. And those ladies, they're 10 years ahead of all of us, you know, elected leaders and our academic leaders. I hope, you know, following Graham Smith this morning, that, you know, our university will wake up and our leaders will wake up to what needs to happen. So see, I told you I'm not a good public speaker. I don't want to start crying. But in terms of public comment and testimony, I wanted to jump ahead to recommendations if, as you're to advise the governor and the legislature. And I think the important point to go forward is that all of the existing knowledge to make Native students successful exists and is out there, and it's been developed by Ray Barnhart and Oscar Quigley and all these ladies, and the good work that Larry Kaplan's done at the Alaska Native Knowledge Network, and all that knowledge exists, and what needs to happen is to bridge it to elected leaders. Our governor needs to know about it, our legislature needs to know about it, and most importantly, they need to know how to act on it. They need direction. We need to tell them, this is why it's important that Native students are successful, and this is how you do it. And making our elected leaders and our school board members and our communities feel that moral imperative to make sure they're doing something to enable Native students to succeed. Because if our school boards are not, we all come from different communities across the state. We all have different, political realities. Some school boards are really advanced and looking for the cultural knowledge that exists to enable Native students to succeed. But there are other regions where it's really difficult, where we come from a lot of racially driven towns, and it's at the school board level where it's the fight, because it's that local, it's where the racism bubbles to the surface and the Native voice is always stomped out. And I think that Native Language Council is in a really good position to have the ear of the governor, that he really impressed upon school boards to make them feel the moral imperative to make decisions and do something about Native education in their schools. Because we know that the answers are out there, and they've been developed over the last 20 years. We just need to make it more accessible for them to understand it and make them feel morally obliged to act. And that's all. Thanks.
Melinda James Ezra, Gudrun Kyrgyzstan, Fairbanks Listo, Doyan Foundation, Coisine. I recently was hired, maybe a year before last, as the new Native Language Director at the Doyan Foundation, and I'm real, not only excited, but also very much feel the responsibility in that position. Because it's the first time our corporation, our regional corporation, has put their own funding into the efforts of our language. And to me, that's a huge statement in terms of wanting to invest in ourselves, and then having that validated this morning when Graham talked about that it's our responsibility to be pursuing our own language, our own knowledge system, and forwarding that. So I'm really excited. I get a chance to work with a dynamic language committee. One of our, and I just want to share this even though I don't know him very well and I'm getting to know him, but what Graham said this morning is to celebrate the successes, and it made me think of Alan Hayden, who got his, who defended the dissertation with some of his faculty members from Alaska Native Language Center. He's a Gwich'in speaker earlier this week. And I went and listened to his dissertation, and every time we see one of our own people move forward into the system and move forward on our own knowledge system and our own experience, it's a source of strength for us. And to witness that is, I think, gives us that power to keep going. So I have some specific recommendations or areas that I'm curious about, and some of them, maybe the state council could be looking at in partnership with First Alaskans, which Liz just mentioned. In terms of, I feel like we have so many programs and resources. Some of it's soft funding, like the Alaska Native Education Program funding that has come into Alaska for years now. But I'm curious about all the resources we have, as well as the programs, and looking at how those line up on education. I'm sure maybe the council has talked about this. If you guys could be looking at under the K-12 structure, in our region, the Doyan Foundation region, I know that Yukon-Kayuk School District and Yukon Flats have funded 2 positions. One is Susan Pascavet's position, and the other one is Ed Alexander. I don't know the exact title of their positions, but I'm curious about those 2 because those 2 districts in our region are doing a lot in language and really forwarding it. And so I want to know where that decision-making came from, as well as how did those positions get established and what money is being used towards those positions. And are other districts doing that? And how are they funding those positions? And then how are they placing it in their schedule with students in terms of making space for it, basically during the day. And then the professional development that's going for those, perhaps those educators that are doing that at the K-12 level. So that would be nice to see that at a statewide, gathering that information. And then really, how was that put in place? I believe perhaps under YKSD, it might have been when we had a Native superintendent, that decision was made. So those are key things to think about. You know, who is in leadership when those decisions were made? The other thing is the same thing, and I don't know, maybe this is where Liz is, where First Alaskans can come into place. I'm curious in terms of the federal funding. We've had JOM money come into the state, and you know, JOM money can be administered through various ways. It can be administered through the tribe, it can be administered through a Native nonprofit, and it also can be administered at the school district level. And so it's sort of splintered, but that can be used, I think, it's been focused in a lot of areas for student academic success, but I'm wondering how much is any of that funding going for language work? I know stateside it does under JOM, some of that goes to help language revitalization efforts. So is any of that funding, and again, being the fact that it's federal funding, I don't know if the state can just do the research on the school district side, and maybe First Alaskans could look at what are tribes and Native nonprofits doing, or somehow they're considering that. And the same thing with Head Start. It would be nice to know if Head Start is, what Head Start programs in Alaska have a language focus. And maybe you guys have, again, thought about that. Those are some areas. And then finally, I think the other area, and I don't have this totally articulated yet, but what's been curious to me is what are really strong partnerships between entities that might be focused both on language and culture, and especially if those partnerships are like under the university structure. I'm curious, I don't know how to say this, and maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself, is we've seen where some of our educational entities, whether they're school districts or the university, may partner with a Native entity to get funding, but then it falls under their policy. And so the voice of our own people in setting the direction of programs gets lost. So again, I don't have that totally articulated, but those are some things for, I think, to be thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're getting a little bit short on time. I know that the next panel is going to need to come in and set up, but I know that our chair has been taking some notes and he might have some final comments for us before we close out our presentation. So I'd like to invite Walkie back up.
Where's my mentor? Because I want to say what she said to me so many times as I was working on my PhD, and I think she stepped out for a moment. But as I was struggling to make sense of my study, she many times would say, "Don't worry, this is a very good start." And so I want to share that same sentiment with you as the audience. Thank you, first of all, thank you for taking the time to come and celebrate this first public sharing of the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council. It's your support and your presence and your input that strengthens who we are as as leaders for our own indigenous languages. We heard from so many wonderful, wonderful speakers today at the public, at your testimonies. We want to take them to heart because it's your language. It's our language, and what you say does resonate. Because we all come from the same space as Indigenous peoples of Alaska. Thank you for taking the time to come and to celebrate this this first opening of who we are to you folks. I'm going to say Doi Mulito, which means it is not over, but I think Annette also wants to say something.
I think it's a famous last line in a movie. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. This is the beginning of some very beautiful partnerships. Because again, the council is just getting started, but we definitely want to reach out across this entire state and form strong and meaningful partnerships to advance language preservation. There is a sign, I want to just do a little, make sure you signed in at the sign-in sheet, and then also public testimony. Any of us can take public testimony from any of you throughout the conference, so if you see us, grab us, we will take notes and we will use them for the council. But I just wanted to add this one little piece of, this one little bit of thought. And it's that language loss is neither inevitable nor is it irreversible. And I think that's the theme of what we want to say as we reach out to you. We can definitely make a change and make a difference. I would also say that I think there's a parallel movement that we can look at for strategy with regard to making change with regard to languages. A very good friend of mine said to me that we need to look at coalition building, not only within the Native community, but outside of the Native community to get this agenda across. And we might be reaching out to churches, for example, to push this agenda. We might be reaching out to educational organizations to push a language agenda. We have to look outside of our community. And then we also have to look for little bits of success. For example, in the civil rights movement, they had a very, very simple strategy, which was identify water fountains in places that had no access otherwise to water. So if there was a very rural water fountain and that was the only water fountain or source of water in an area and it was whites only, there was case law built up to identify those water fountains to desegregate one water fountain at a time. And so they built a ton of case law desegregating water fountains that paved the way for Brown versus Board of Education. What are our water fountains? What are our strategies? And that's what this council wants to identify. We need to learn what our water fountains are to build that case law, to build those successes so that we can make significant policy change. But it all begins with little water fountains. And again, it's neither irreversible or inevitable.
Thank you for coming on behalf of the council. It was our honor to show to you where we are, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Oyana.